is trying to pull it out of a tailspin.
The Brazilian people have been massacred. There are more than 14 million people out of work. We want an answer.
The jobless rate in Brazil has risen sharply in the last 2 years, hitting 13.7% in March, the worst in 2 decades. In the space of 5 years, unemployment has gone from single digits to double digits. Tens of thousands of jobs were lost at big firms caught up in the corruption scandal that led to the impeachment of Temer's predecessor, Dilma Rousseff. Oil and gas giant Petrobras, which was at the heart of the scandal, lost billions of dollars, although it has since recovered. Brazil's economy plunged by 3.8% in 2015 and 3.6% in 2016, the worst recession on record. The fresh corruption scandal struck just after the central bank announced an expected return to growth this year. Trading on the Sao Paulo Stock Exchange was briefly suspended on Thursday after shares dropped 10%. The real also tanked, posting the biggest single-day decline since 1999. Brazilians say they've had enough.
We need to have an election right now for the country to regain growth and social development. Brazilians are sick of seeing politicians siphoning off money from the state.
Market jitters are set to continue for a while as President Temer refuses to resign.
Now we saw some more market ups and downs in the US this week. After the latest scandal in Washington with Donald Trump, Wall Street saw its worst one-day performance of the year on Wednesday. Data released today showed that U.S. equities took a major hit. Investors dumped almost $9 billion worth over the past week. Meanwhile, European equities added $1.1 billion in the same week. That's their biggest gain in more than half a year. There are even some analysts who say that European funds stand to gain a lot of cash from overseas thanks to political turmoil in the Americas. And speaking of markets, let's take a look at how they're closing out the volatile week. Wall Street is seeing a strong session today. It's extending yesterday's gains after Wednesday's big fall, with industrial companies leading the rise. S&P 500 up about 0.9%, with Nasdaq and the Dow Jones also making a solid showing. Oil prices are heading for a second week of gains as well, based on growing confidence that crude exporters will extend output cuts to stem the oversupply. Both the global benchmark Brent crude and WTI in the United States are up almost 2%. And Europe closed out the week strong, with Paris's CAC 40 leading at 0.2% in the green. London FTSE and Frankfurt DAX also trading up. And it's also worth noting that the Eurozone consumer confidence has hit a 10-year high. So good news for the Eurozone. It's time now to take a look at some other business news that's making headlines across the globe. Foot Locker stocks plunged 15% after its profits fell short of analysts' forecasts. The athletic apparel company is the latest retailer to take a hit on the markets. It blamed slow sneaker sales and a strong dollar for the low performance. Greeks have been hitting the streets in protest after their parliament voted new austerity measures, including tax hikes and pension cuts. Lawmakers hope to convince the country's Eurozone lenders that to release the next round of bailout funds. The former Greek finance minister said that there was zero chances of that happening at next week's Eurogroup meeting. And then finally, we're going to end on a bit of a lighter note for you. Japan's work culture is known as one of the most demanding in the world. Last year, the government even found that 1 in 5 workers were at risk of death by overwork. It's called karoshi in Japanese. But one company in Japan is trying to ease some of that pressure on its workers by bringing in some furry co-workers. Foray Corporation in Tokyo says that having cats in the workplace relieves the stress of their human counterparts and can boost productivity. But some of those cats apparently didn't get that memo. Take a listen.
I started the Office Cat program to encourage workers to come to work with their cats. There's also a €40 monthly stipend if they adopt a...
Take your cat to work day, Tom. What do you think?
I don't have one yet, but I was thinking the other day perhaps it's time to rethink that. Do you have a cat?
I don't know.
No, okay. Well,
I don't know how much work I would get done.
Yeah, well, I don't think either of us would bring a cat to work. We don't yet have one. We'll have to go and get one. Thank you very much, Anke Ule, with today's roundup of the business news. Time for us to turn our eye to sports. Your World Roundup starts right now.
Don Isner has claimed another big-name scalp in reaching the semi-finals of the Rome Masters, the American knocking out 6th seed Marin Cilic. On tour for a decade, Isner had never never beaten a top 10 player before. His straight sets win in the last round against reigning US Open and former French champion Stan Wawrinka. 24 hours later, he beat another despite former US Open winner Cilic, crushing Isner in the second set. First and third set tie breaks, enough for Isner to win 7-6, 2-6, 7-6. Up next, Alexander Zverev. Simona Halep was the first woman through to the semi-finals of the Italy Open in Rome after ending Annette Contavet's dream run. The Estonian qualifier had knocked out top seed Angelique Kerber this week and 16th seed Mirjana Lucic-Baroni. But the 21-year-old ranked 68th in the world was no match for the in-form Romanian 6th seed in the first set. Contavet saved 2 match points before succumbing 6-2, 6-4. Anaheim levelled the Western Conference Finals against Nashville at 2 games all after an overtime victory. Richard Raquel fired the Ducks ahead in the first period in Nashville. Nick Ritchie grabbed a second for Anaheim, and the Predators looked doomed to a rare home defeat in front of a franchise record crowd. But the Predators launched another rally as PK Subban slashed the deficit in half in the final period. Nashville then forced overtime for the second time in 4 games as Philip Forsberg equalised with just 34 seconds to play. Unlike in Game 1, though, it was the Ducks who prevailed on Thursday as Corey Perry's shot deflected in off Subban's stick to...
Through a lot, more downs in the playoffs than ups, but I think we just learned from that, and I think now that we have a sense of calmness and we have the ability to always regroup, whether we're up or we're down or something like that happens. I think that we all just have the belief in the locker room, and we trust one another that we can come back or have success in any situation.
Fernando Alonso has had his first taste of what it will be like to compete in this year's Indianapolis 500, taking time out from Formula One. Spain's two-time world champion practiced with nearly all 33 cars on the track at once on Tuesday, while on Thursday he was the fourth fastest in the McLaren Honda. 35-year-old McLaren driver admits he is not yet comfortable with oval racing as he looks to cram years of learning into just a few weeks' preparation for the most famous race in IndyCar racing.
I think it's good fun. Also, when you meet guys out there in the traffic, you learn, from different ones what they are doing, what techniques they are doing, and I think every day was interesting and different by itself. So that was very useful. Unfortunately, the free practice are ending slowly in the week. I still missing more laps, but yeah, we will try to make the most of it tomorrow with the more power that we have on Friday, and try to learn from that. We'll start from zero tomorrow.
It's already been a whirlwind few days for Alonso at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Friday is the final day of practice before qualifying this weekend. It's just over a week left before the Indy 500 takes place on Sunday after next. Unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua is willing to fight Vladimir Klitschko in a rematch of their Wembley Classic. The Briton stopped Klitschko in the 11th round last month to add the WBA World Heavyweight title to his IBF crown. Joshua understands the temptation of a rematch for the Ukrainian, but thinks he should consider hanging up his gloves instead.
If I was Vladimir, I would fight again. The type of fight it was, he probably thinks he can beat me. He's got everything to gain again, and there's belts on the line, there's pride on the line. So I think if I was in his position, I'd fight again. But I'm not Vladimir, and I don't know what he wants to do. Do you know where I'm coming from? But if I was speaking to Vladimir, I'd say, mate, that was a phenomenal performance. You done very well, and you didn't win. Leave on a high, and let the other guys do what they're doing.
Joshua would step into the ring with Tyson Fury, but the Gypsy King will not have his boxing license reinstated until after an UK anti-doping hearing after testing positive for a banned substance in February 2015.
Tyson, I wish he was consistent, because we would see these big fights that give you that type of respect time and time again. I would fight Tyson in my next fight. I would have fought, if it weren't for Klitschko, I would have fought Tyson if he wanted to. Listen, when he's ready, we won't be going anywhere.
Fury is a question for another day, but it looks likely there'll be a Joshua Klitschko Part 2 with Cardiff's Principality Stadium muted as a venue for an October.
Well, that was today's roundup of the top sports stories. Don't go away. I'll be back at 8:30 Paris time with the top stories.